Okay, guys, so this next video that we're going to do, and this next one we're going to talk about, is going to be looking at how to use the manipulation tools inside of Illustrator. So we've been playing a lot with making shapes and changing their general color appearance of them. The next step is to be able to fine-tune, manipulate those structures as we see fit. So let's start off by working with this stroke line we have. So if you still have your pen outline on screen, go ahead and highlight it. Select it to turn it on. And we're going to go into our toolbar, and you're going to slide down below the drawing tools. There's another bracket of tools in there. And they start off with this rotate tool that looks like a circle rotating. And these are considered your sort of manipulation tools. So they're fairly basic, but some of them can do very interesting things. So the first one up is the rotate. Pretty self-explanatory. If you turn this one on, you can click and drag anywhere inside your scene, and it will rotate your object around the center of its axis, or a little rotation point at the center of that object. Now you can actually change where an object rotates from. Before you even click and drag, you can set where there's a little light blue anchor point that floats on screen for this tool, and that just tells it where it's going to rotate from. So I can click anywhere once on screen or twice to drop that anchor somewhere else in order to rotate my shape from that point. That just allows for more fine-tuned control if you need to rotate an object from a specific position instead of just rotating it arbitrarily from its center. So that's a great tool to know how to use for precision rotation. If you go next down in the list, you have the scaling tool. Works the same as rotate. Again, it changes the size of an object. So you can click and drag to be able to rescale an object. Now it's a little more freeform. So it's not what I would recommend if you want to do a locked ratio change for the shape of an object. It will squeeze and it will distort it. So that's scale. Now underneath each one there's even more tools, but you can play with those as you need to. We're not going to cover those. Below scale there's another tool here called width. Now this is the one I want to show you on your pen line here. It looks kind of like a bizarre tool. It's got like a weird squiggly shape on it. Go ahead and click on it. And this is what the width tool does. The width tool allows you to change the appearance of a stroke effect on a line and customize it. So let me show you. When you move your mouse over the path line for a shape or an outline like this we made with the pen tool, as you move it along, it shows you a little representative white dot that moves along the line. What that white dot indicates is a point that you can drag on or click and drag on to define a change in width for the stroke line. So I'm going to start off by dragging one up here near the end of my line where I start, and I'm going to click and drag it. Now watch as I drag that it thickens out the line as I drag away from my stroke. Or if I push inward, it actually tightens it up and tapers it off. So then I can get this kind of unique approach to the way this line appears on screen. Now the cool thing is you can add as many of those little lines along your path line for an object as you want to change up its appearance. So I can make some very bizarre forms very, very quickly. But not just bizarre, but also unique is what the important factor is here. So you can drag these out and create them very quickly. You can also go back and edit them. So if you dropped a dot, you can move your mouse along the dotted line until you find where one of these little expanded lines is. And you can click on the outer circles that it adds outside your stroke line to shrink it or grow it out. You can also hold down Option when you click on one of those outer point lines, and it will pull up just one side. Now this is a pretty pretty amazing tool for illustrators when you're wanting to control the effect of your line work, again, to kind of create unique forms very, very quickly. And that's all put into this one little tool called the width tool. So you can do that all the way around the outline stroke for a shape if you want to, but it only changes the stroke effect, okay? It does not change the shape of an object or a fill color. It will only change the shape of a stroke color. If you look underneath the width tool, there are actually about 6 or 7 other tools listed beneath it that are kind of entertaining and interesting to play with. Among them are things like the warp tool. This one's actually kind of interesting because it can actually change the shape of an object. So if I come into my stroke, I can actually push and bend my stroke line with the warp tool. So it works with it kind of like paint, like finger paint. There's other ones in here like the twirl, where you can actually twirl, make twirly forms automatically with your lines, or your actual stroke effect lines that you have. So kind of unique, kind of fun to play with. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it'll work. Yeah, here we go. Like on normal solid shapes, you can also twirl them and rotate their outer pathway lines as well. But any one of those tools listed underneath there will do something like this. So again, they add kind of a special effect to a shape. Okay. So that's playing around with that. The next one down on the list is your basic transform tool. That's the one that's the dotted rectangle with the white arrow on it. Now I do want to show you this because it gives you some unique options you don't just get if you use the regular move tool up at the top of the toolbar, the black arrow. So when you turn on transform, you get a little pop-up display tool that appears inside your Illustrator interface with these 4 giant icons. And then you also get a control box around the shape you have selected. So the great thing is we have some things we can toy with here. Besides just reshaping our object by clicking on the outer edges of the box, we can use this first little display icon to constrain proportions by using this chain link to turn on so that we can always reshape our object evenly. So that's just from turning on the little chain link icon above these 4 main icons that it pops up. And then below that chain link are your main transform features. The basic one is the one with the hand. The one below it, this is for perspective distortion. So if you want to add like a perspective warp to a design element, you can very quickly do that by clicking and dragging on the corners of the control box after you turn on the distort perspective. So you can make it look like it's shrinking or growing into the distance. And then the last one is called free distort. And that one you can just click and drag on the corners of your control box to arbitrarily stretch and bend and move the overall shape of your object using a rectangular outline as the controller for it. So again, great for kind of distortion and visual manipulation of the form. When you're done with this tool, you can go back to a different tool to exit out of it. I always go back to the arrow tool at the top of the list. All right, so that's another way that you can fine-tune manipulate an object. Now, there's one more in here that I want to show you on this particular list for object manipulation, and it's actually called the Shape Builder. The Shape Builder is right below Transform, and it looks like 2 overlapping circles with an arrow on it. And this tool gives you the ability to create unique forms or build up unique forms from multiple shapes connecting together. So I'm going to get rid of some of this junk on my screen real quick. And I'm just going to draw some arbitrary shapes on screen. Okay, I'm going to use my ellipse tool from my toolbar. And if you want to draw perfect circles, by the way, with the ellipse, hold down Shift, and you will get a perfect circle every time. If you want to draw out from a center point with any object you're drawing, hold down Option, and then you can also hold down Shift with that to draw a perfect shape or equilateral shape out of the center of its drawing point. So again, you can hold down Option to draw from the center, and then Alt to draw a perfect equilateral form. So I'm going to draw like some concentric circles here. And even have some overlap each other. You should notice when you work around in Illustrator, they give you these little green hints on screen. Smart guides is what they call them. They tell you where certain things are for an object you're moving across, like its center. It'll say center on screen as you move close to the center point, and it'll actually allow you to create a shape right from the center point. So that's really helpful and kind of unique. So I've drawn a few forms here to get started. And now what I'm going to do is we're going to work with the shape builder to combine and separate this thing out. Now you have to remember, with this tool, it works really well when some of the shapes are connected, so make sure you have some overlapping forms. Okay, so if you have just a bunch of separate circles that are on their own, actually draw a couple that are connected together in some way, or overlapping. All right, so I'm going to go down, and what I'm going to do now, in order for Shape Builder to work correctly, you have to select the objects that you want to add together with the tool. So I'm going to draw a big selection box around this whole design I've made. And when I do that, I can see all the different design elements that I've created inside this region. And then I'm going to go down to Shape Builder. All right, now here's what you should notice immediately after turning on the tool. As you move your mouse across your design without clicking, you start to notice that it starts showing you highlighted regions of your current design that you have selected. And what it shows you are intersections of all of your shapes and all of the individual intersecting areas. So, and then what it's also telling you is that this tool will allow you, based on whatever shaded, that it can separate for you or draw together to create a new form based on those shapes. So I'm going to start in this shape over here, and this is what I'm going to do. You can watch me first before you start clicking. This is a click and drag tool. So you start in the shape that you want to begin with, and then you draw, click and drag and draw into neighboring shapes to add them to your current new shape. So as I go across shapes, notice how there's a red border that goes around the outer edge, and then everything gets shaded together. If I let go, those shapes are now combined together. So now I have like this unique form. Let me click away. And I now have this thing. See this? So now I have kind of a unique shape that I didn't have before, just from doing a little bit of positive negative space subtraction. But I can keep going. So I'm just going to reselect the whole thing and go back into Shape Builder for you. So I can keep going at this point, and I can add other things together or separate them. So if I click on, for instance, this inner circle, that will cut out and separate this circle from the design. If I come over here into this region, I can actually go in and add these together. I can add these together and these. All to make kind of new, unique forms as I go. And I can even draw this little region right here together to make a solid circle again out of that. I can draw those together to make that. Draw those in to get that kind of solid look for those. And now if I come out and click away, it doesn't look like anything's changed until I reselect my items. And then you start getting new kind of unique shapes and even negative space forms that you didn't have before. So kind of fun to play with. Again, great for building unique icon forms or silhouettes, I might add. So if you needed something that was kind of very clean line looking, this could be a great way to add them together to build it. So a great tool, a great manipulation tool for working with manipulating your forms. All right. Now that's technically the last one I want to show you from the listing for manipulators. There's another cool one down here called the blend tool. If you jump down about 4 more icons, it looks like 3 separate shapes blending together. So a little square, a kind of in-between rounded square, and a circle. This is a transformation tool in that you can actually make one shape transform into another with specified number of steps of transformation in between. So here's how we'll do it to play around with it. Let's go to our curvature tool. So that's the pin with the squiggly line. And let's bring that out, and we're going to draw a couple separate lines on screen. So first off, I'm going to draw kind of a squiggle that goes something like this. So it's got lots of little hills and bumps in it, okay? After you draw it halfway across like this, hit return or escape to cancel the tool so that we don't keep drawing. And then I want you to draw a separate squiggly line across from it that's also a squiggly shape. And then hit escape to stop the tool from drawing after you're done. Now we're going to change 2 more things about our design elements here. First off, after you've drawn it, let's go back to the top line up here, and we're going to change its color options. So let's switch it out from a fill color. Let's turn off the fill, and let's apply a stroke color. Let's say blue. Now let's go to the bottom line and turn off its fill color, and let's change its stroke to yellow. All right. Everybody got that applied? All right, so now let's go down to the blend tool from our toolbar. And what you're going to do with the blend tool is you have to tell it to do 2 things. Number 1, you set the shape that you want to start with. So you click directly on the path outline of a starter shape. So I'm going to start with this squiggle down here, the shorter one. And I'm going to click directly along its path. You'll know you're able to click whenever it shows like a little star icon next to your cursor. So I'm going to click once to set it as the starter shape. And then I'm going to go over to my other line, and it'll show a plus sign when I overlap its path. And then I'm going to add it to the blend. Now when I add it to the blend, now you should get a color combination transformation on screen. Pretty wild, huh? Now, this is based on a certain number of colored steps in order to transform one tone into another. It looks different for everyone based on the distance between the 2 items and the design of the shapes. It's kind of fun because it almost makes it look like cloth if you use kind of organic line forms like this. We can actually go in and manipulate it more if we want to. Double click on the blend tool real quick. And you get what are called blend options. And underneath blend options, you can change the spacing effect from smooth color to specified steps. So let's do that. And instead of giving it 254 steps of change, let's actually change it to like 50. And then see what you get. So now you get a much finer line form with fewer changes in the design of it. So it can get kind of interesting very quickly. Let me show you something else you can do. Once you blend 2 objects, you can then manipulate them separately to change its appearance whenever you want to. Again, anything built with vectors, typically you can edit over and over again. There's not a whole lot of permanence unless you erase something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my object and I'm going to double click on one of these little outer reference lines that I made. So I'm going to double click on this top stroke line up here. Now when you double click in Illustrator, it converts into what's called isolation mode. And so everything else turns gray except the thing that you selected. You'll even see a gray bar run across the top of your document window. And that just indicates again for you that you are in isolation mode. So you can edit this one thing you have selected. So I'm going to click on that one line I have at the top. So it's all on its own. And I'm going to move it around on screen. So as I move it, the blend moves with the position. If I shrink this by using the control handles outside of its box, the blend also changes according to that. I can also rotate it to get different effects. So you start getting line overlays and overlapping lines, so you get kind of an interesting wavy effect with it. And you can get quite a bit out of this tool. It's very interesting. Again, it kind of makes sort of unique forms very quickly, abstract ones. So kind of cool to play with. All right, when you're done in isolation mode, you can actually double click outside of your design to go back to regular drawing mode inside of the software. All right, and that's how you can work with the manipulation tools inside of Illustrator, at least a handful of them. So that's how we'll play with that. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this particular clip here and open up any questions.